with her brother. I said, I think that's the end of her driving lesson. And sure enough, the car door opens up. Out he comes. He goes,
I actually had Elizabeth in my class in 3rd grade when I was teaching at Woodstock.
He did hit a speed going down.
And the conversation at the dinner table was, the teacher today was so mean to me.
Well, that was before.
I'm sorry to hear that. What I was referred to as the teacher.
He was my teacher for a whole year in 3rd grade. It was
In that school.
In a private,
It was a
private Jewish
and then we,
Because normally,
no, and then he,
It was the worst.
then he changed
I probably still have that shirt.
Photographer has to leave.
Yes, can you take a picture of all of
Everybody
us?
over there.
Over there?
jobs,
Over there.
and he got a
Okay,
job
we have
at
to go over there.
an all boys school.
So one night, a bunch of us, about 8 of us, were in front of the corner cupboard, hanging out, and one of the people was Craig Hubble, who took a soda can and threw it out behind a 57 Chevy driving by and yelled out, "Your hubcap fell off." The car pulled over, screeched to a halt. Out comes this guy, who seemed like about 20 feet tall with a sheepskin thing. He'd just come off the mountain, came over, he started yelling at us and pushing us around. I think even Chops was among us, but it was scary. This guy was huge. And then the next thing we know, Al Thon, the 90-year-old gnome cop, came over, and the guy just sort of, like, I don't even have to pay attention to him, and it was, we knew that Al was not going to save the day. So he's still yelling at us, and the next thing we know, we hear, "If you want to mess with somebody, you can start with me." We all turn around, and it's Carl Van Wagenen, state trooper, hat there, and the guy took one look at him, turned around, and left. The next day, I went in and told Freddie about it. Freddie. And Fred and I made up things that said Carl is a good guy on cardboard from the newspaper stuff, and also made signs, and I stapled them to the telephone poles all along the street here. And Carl must have seen them, and I can't remember what happened so much in 1965 after that, but in 2001, when I was doing my social work intern at mental health department, working out of the jail, I was waiting to go into the jail in the little waiting room, and in comes Carl, who's now working for the probation department. And I said, we're sitting there talking, and I bring up the thing about the day we did Carl's a good guy thing. And Carl looked me straight in the face and said, "That changed my life."
No.
And then we got buzzed in, and it was like, Carl just said that changed, not just it was nice, that it changed his life. And I certainly wanted Fred to know that that had happened, that little thing is sort of a fun thing to do. And it just always made a point to me, you never know what little thing you might do, an act of kindness, might really have an impact on somebody. And it sort of said to me that Carl, as much as he wanted to be the badass, there must have been some part of him that wanted to be liked.
It was like turning Sarah Palin into a Democrat.
Yeah.
Dad was the principal.
Alan. And his dad was a principal, and Alan Van Wagenen was a brother, and Ross was a brother. There's the 3 of them.
No, there's
And
another more than that.
But, there might have been, and Jay, yeah.
And there's another one, you're missing one.
Ross.
But that's one of my favorite stories about him. But I just wanted to also say how important your dad was to me, to have somebody. I have 2 older brothers, but in some ways he was like a big brother to me, and to know that I could go into the news shop and go behind the cashier and hang out with him and work on greeting cards, and to have that sense of almost status and privilege that I got to go behind the counter and hang out with Fred was really important to me at that time.
You may not have known that.
The register was always open.
Yeah, well, it was all that, and I spent a year working the counter, doing the burgers and the eggs and so forth. So I spent a lot of time in the news shop, especially if when I didn't work there, you had 25 cents, you could get an English muffin, or you could get something. You felt like you were, kings to go in there. But the fact that your dad would let us hang out there, even if we didn't have money.
Right.
And sometimes your mom, Charlotte and Frank would let us, and other times, no, get the hell out. But you always knew that Fred was going to let you hang out there and accept you, and a lot of things that people are saying, and that mattered a great deal to me at that time in my life. A very important man to me.
I believe all the
Very
stories.
important.
I am not here to tell your children the truth. I'm here to let them find it. So if I tell them
Amen.
There's left-handed chalk,
They'll believe it.
they have to prove it.
we
That
believe
kid got you with the chopsticks. though.
Yes, I also mentioned left-handed chopsticks. And a boy in my class brings in a note in Mandarin, and he reads it. Yes, there was left-handed chopsticks, signed his grandmother. So when I saw her at the end of the year, I said, "Thank you so much." I don't know what you're talking about. I realized the kid had put me on.
Well, that reminds me when I told you before about telling people they had to have their hand stamped with the bus ticket thing, not just a ticket, and we'd make them put out their hand, stamp them, and they didn't have to do that at all. But we could,
I think telling a woman that Kingston by bus is 12 miles, but by car is 14 or 15. Because the tires are smaller.
yeah, you can do it. You always been doing that sort of thing.
I did it a lot.
And we always
When we came back here,
That's
one trip, somebody asked about kangaroos. Do you have kangaroos? I said, yes. Listen, because of the drought,
we were in San Diego.
kangaroo in San Diego, yeah. Because of the drought, the kangaroos are now over the harbor bridge, all over the harbor bridge, and because they're protected, you have to drive very slowly, and there are policemen going this way to avoid the kangaroos. And Christmas is in July. Actually, we have Christmas in December. And does the sun come up in the east?
Oh, that's my favorite. I volunteer at the zoo.
Not all
And I
the
get
time.
that. Does the sun rise in the east?
Yeah, it's
And it's Christmas
Americans are-
in December. What's a
I'll
religious
say
holiday?
this,
It has nothing
before
to do with
9/11,
weather.
Americans knew nothing of the world. After 9/11, the world, Americans appreciated that the rest of the world had problems. But yeah. Anyway, I must say, I'm amazed looking at all you teenagers and how old you got. All gray hair, and that's just the women.
I just got that.
There's a football team called Collingwood, which is our hated enemies. And I play golf with a Collingwood supporter, and I say, you know how you can tell a Collingwood supporter? They have bad tattoos, their teeth are missing, and they have scruffy beards, and that's just the women. Paul puts up with that.
I can
Anyway.
tell you use that a lot.
Always. I thank you for coming, particularly overseas people from New Jersey. And,
Freddie, what happened? You went 60 miles north. You should have been in the Borscht Belt.
I do remember that. I actually remember my uncle had a hotel there that burnt down in January. And I know who burnt it bank. People who burnt it had the vowel ending in their last name.
Oh, okay. One of my tribe.
Well, that's only a rumor. That's only, I mean, I certainly, I find it amazing that all you people remember me.
Oh,
And with fondness, there are people who don't remember me. Well, I don't want to remember me, but yes, and I think it's just great. And we should do this every year.
yes.
It's just the fact that it's a long time on a plane, and you can't get off mid-flight and say, I've had enough of this flight.
22 hours.
All right, I want to say something now. So, well, I want to say something, and I'm not normally so emotional, but my dad. I've always looked up to both my parents, but I'm going to speak about Dad, so don't worry. But I've always loved my dad, and I went into teaching because of my dad. I learned to cook because of my